Hello, best ever body composition challengers. I'm Carrie Bach, registered dietitian with Core Plus, and today we're talking all things protein. How much protein you should eat, how often you should eat protein, and some different ideas on protein foods. How much protein do you really need? And we're talking in regards to really being able to build your muscle mass throughout this challenge. The daily value is set fairly low. For most women, it's recommended about 45 grams per day, men 55 grams per day. And that amount is just to prevent disease states. It's not really for optimal health, and it's definitely not to help prevent muscle loss and to build muscle. So to be able to prevent muscle loss that happens naturally with aging and to build that muscle, the need is really more around 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So let me repeat that. It's 0.7 grams to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So let's take a 150-pound person as our example. To figure out this person's protein needs, we would multiply their body weight in pounds, 150 by 0.7. That will be 105, and that will be the bottom range. And then the top range number, we take 1 and multiply it by their weight in pounds. 150 times 1, easy math, 150. So 105 to 150 grams of protein per day is what about a 150-pound person needs. That's quite a bit more than the daily value recommendation, right? So even within that range, there's quite a bit of variance. How do you know if you should be more towards the 105 or closer to the 150? 105 is pretty good for most of us, especially if we, are coming from a place of eating 60 grams of protein per day. That 105 can make a huge difference in our body's ability to build muscle. If we're older, over 65, we want to be hitting, that 105 mark or close to it, pending that everything else is healthy, especially our kidney function. If we are endurance athletes, if we are really hitting the gym hard and those weights hard, we are going to be at the higher end of that range. And that also holds true for those who are restricting calories for weight loss. That means our protein needs are going to be higher as well. So those are just a couple of variables where you should be, that you can keep in mind to know where you should be within that range. All right, so 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight is how much protein we should be getting in throughout this challenge. Okay, let's talk about how often we should be eating protein then. We used to think that there was this magical window right after we work out, and that's where we really need to focus our protein intake amount. And now we know that our body's a lot smarter than that, that window can actually last over a 24-hour period. So what studies are showing now is that the majority of adults will build muscle if they consciously eat 30 to 40 grams of protein 4 times throughout the day, spread pretty evenly throughout the day. That we don't need to then focus so much on the amount of protein after our workout. So 30 to 40 grams 4 times per day, spread throughout the day, starting right with breakfast, not fasting at all, because we don't want to put our body in any type of situation in which it has to break down muscle for energy. So starting right with breakfast and spreading that equally throughout the day. Now let's say you woke up and you had to skip breakfast, crazy day, or you had to skip lunch. Then we do really want to focus on making sure we get a bolus of protein after we work out. For those younger folks under 30, you can get away with 20 to 30 grams after your workout. For those who are over 30, we want to be pushing that to 30 to 40 grams after you work out to really make up and heal the breakdown of muscle that happens, especially during weightlifting efforts. Okay, so we have our 30 to 40 4 times per day. We know that we also can work on having some protein after we work out. It's also completely fine to still have a little bit with a shake and some carbs after you work out as well, even if you're doing that 30 to 40 throughout the day. But let's say you are just really hitting the gym hard, you're lifting the weights really hard, and your goal is to build muscle, build muscle, build muscle. Then you may want to take this one step further, and you might want to just break down the total amount of protein that you need in a day into a little bit smaller increments, but more often throughout the day. So maybe starting breakfast with 20 to 30 grams, a snack at around 15 to 30 grams again. Lunch, we want that to be the biggest protein intake of the day. So somewhere between 30 to 45 grams, or 35 to 45 grams, I should say. And then another snack midday, and then your dinner to get to your total amounts of protein. And that just kind of shortens the window that your body doesn't have some amino acids or protein floating around in order to utilize and build muscle with. It doesn't mean that it'll automatically boost your muscle growth. It's just providing your body with a more consistent amount throughout the day. So if you are lifting a lot of weights, that is the better place for you to be. Now let's circle back around to that bolus of protein at lunch, that larger amount of protein at lunch. Why is that? The reason is because twofold, actually. The first is the way that we eat now, with the majority of the protein being later in the day. We've already usually worked out, we're running around, we're up, we're metabolizing, and that creates muscle breakdown. So we want to be throwing more protein earlier in the day to give the body the tools it needs to prevent that muscle breakdown from happening. The second reason is because we know that there's an amino acid called leucine, and it's called a limiting amino acid in regards to building muscle. We want to have a bolus of leucine at least once a day to tell our body that it is not to be breaking down any muscle. We need to be building muscle, and in order to do that, we need that, anywhere from 30 grams if it's from animal sources to 40, 45 grams if it's from plant sources, to get enough of that amino acid leucine on board to signal our body to keep building muscle, stop breaking it down. All right, so let's talk about some food sources. So what does that mean, 30 to 40 grams? Well, when you eat meat, it's pretty darn easy. About 4 ounces gives you almost 30 grams. So this is what 4 ounces of salmon looks like. It is not a very large portion at all. Chicken, beef, elk, all those types of meats, any other types of fish. Each ounce gives you about 7 grams of protein per ounce. So each ounce gives you about 7 grams of protein. So 4 ounces give you around 28. Throw some green vegetables in there, you hit 30 in a heartbeat. Okay, some other animal sources. Greek yogurt is another great source. 1 cup of Greek yogurt gives you 22 grams of protein. This is plain Greek yogurt. And I wanted to portion out a cup so you could really see what that looks like. It's not that much. A cup of cottage cheese gives you 28 grams of protein. Now keep in mind, cottage cheese is high in sodium, so for someone like me who needs the extra sodium, it's great, but for someone else who's watching sodium intake, you need to watch your portions with cottage cheese as well. Each egg gives you 7 grams. I toss in maybe an egg or 2 and then a cup of egg whites, because that 1 cup of egg whites gives you 27 to 28 grams. And so that's a good variety of animal sources of protein. So what happens if you're not too crazy about animal sources of protein? Let's talk about some vegetarian sources. Soy's gotten a really kind of questionable name. One day it's good, the next day it's not good. For most of us, it's okay to have. But what we need to be smart about it. We want it to be organic, tofu. We don't want to have the soy protein isolate, the soy milks, all those things I stay away from, and definitely like the boxed soy foods, like the soy chicken nuggets and things like that. But if we're looking at edamame, which gives us 17 grams per cup, soy nuts, which are just dehydrated edamame, so a quarter of a cup gives us about those 17 grams of protein, or an organic sprouted tofu, firm, a half of a block gives you 16 grams, so you double that. It's pretty easy to eat a full block, or toss in some beans with it. A cup of beans give us about 15 grams of protein. Pinto beans, black beans, red beans, all those types of starchy beans. And we can even look at things like edamame pasta. A cup of edamame pasta gives us around 24, 25 grams of protein per serving. Now, the other key component with soy, and where we get in trouble with soy, especially in regards to our thyroid, is when we don't get enough iodine on a regular basis. So just make sure you're using iodized salt, that maybe you have a little bit of that in your multi, if you're taking a multivitamin, to help protect your thyroid if you're eating a lot of soy. Another source of protein that's plant-based would be nuts and seeds. This happens to be pepitas. I had to make myself a cheat sheet. These guys have about 8 grams per quarter of a cup. That holds true for most nuts and seeds. The hemp seeds, however, give us 10 grams of protein per 3 tablespoons. So a little smaller of a portion, a little bit more protein there. And then we can talk about protein powders too. Now, foods are always best, especially when you're throwing in, whether you're eating meat or plant-based proteins, throwing in lots of green veggies, because those give a little bit of extra protein too, plus the enzymes that help us break down and utilize those amino acids. We're missing some of those things when we just rely on protein powders, plus a whole slew of nutrients we probably don't even know about yet. But these are nice to have around when you have those days that are crazy, or maybe you're in that really strong building phase where you just need to have something easy to go to at least once a day. So something like a whey protein, this gives you 20 grams per scoop. Look at the label because it does vary from brand to brand. But one thing I wanted to point out is to really buy high quality protein powders. Look for NSF certified for sport. So not just the NSF, it needs to say certified for sport underneath it, because these products have been tested all the way through manufacturing and off the shelf, and they're guaranteed to whatever they say is in it is actually what's in it. There aren't going to be any surprises. So when I work with professional athletes, NCAA athletes, this is all that I can recommend so that there aren't any surprises if they have to take a drug test. Same with plant-based. When you're going for plant-based, I usually look for something that says sport on it, because that means they've added a little bit of branched chain amino acids. Leucine is one of those branched chain amino acids, and remember, we want more leucine to tell our body to stop allowing it to break down muscle and to actually start building it again. So one of my favorites is this Garden of Life Sport, and it has 15 grams per scoop, so a little less than the whey, but it's another great plant-based with lots of good amino acids. All right, so we talked a lot about how much protein, how often you should eat it, talked about some options on protein foods, but let's talk about those folks who may need to be a little bit more careful about all of a sudden consuming a lot of protein. Obviously, if you're coming from a place where you're having maybe 40 to 50 grams of protein per day, and let's say your needs, when you figure it out, you're at 105 to 150 like we did for our example, start slow. Maybe go to 75 or 85 for a while and see how that feels, and then make your way to that 105 point. Make sure you're drinking a lot of water along the way, because the whole point is building muscle. Muscle's mostly water. We need extra water to break down the protein. So start also in the morning with water and drinking plenty throughout the day. Those folks who may have kidney function issues, we also want to be cautious with just all of a sudden increasing protein. Talk to your physician or your dietitian about what's best for you. And then those who are morbidly obese, using that calculator of 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight may not be the best for you. Feel free to reach out to me or your physician or dietitian to get your best number as well. All right, everybody, good luck with the challenge, and I look forward to next time. Take care.